Good day everyone. Now we will tackle about the Far East to Berlin. Far East to Berlin, 1885 to 1887. Rizal went to Far East and Germany in order to specialize in ophthalmology. He particularly chose this branch of medicine because he wanted to cure his mother's eye ailment. So, among all branches, he chose this specialization because he wanted to cure his studying at the Universidad Central de Madrid. Rizal, who was then 24 years old, went to Paris to acquire more knowledge in ophthalmology. Rizal stayed in Berlin, capital of Germany, to gain further knowledge of ophthalmology, to attend some lectures at its local university, to further his studies of sciences and languages, to get familiar with the scenic Germany, to be part of the scientific community, and to finish his novel, Noli Me Tangere. He served as assistant to the famous oculist of Europe. He also continued his travels and observation of European life and custom in Paris, Heidelberg, Leipzig, and Berlin. In Gay Paris 1885 to 1886, on his way to Paris, he stopped at Barcelona to visit his friends Maximo Viola. In November 1885, Rizal was living in Paris, where he sojourned for about 4 months. Rizal went to Paris to train under the famous oculoplastic surgeon, Dr. Louis de Wecker, also known as Louis von Wecker, where he served as assistant at the Wecker's clinic for 4 months, from November 1885 to February 1886. Maximo Viola was seasoned October 17, 1857 to September 3, 1933. Was a propagandist writer, revolutionary leader, and doctor from Bulacan, Philippines. He is also known as the best friend of Jose Rizal in Europe. They worked together, they visited museum and art gallery, restaurants, and stay in hotels to work there in Europe. Louis de Wecker, 1832 to 1906, was one of the foremost ophthalmologists of the 19th century. It was from him that Rizal learned various types of surgery, including the cataract surgery technique he used to treat his mother, but he could not stay in Paris much longer. Dr. Jose Rizal, 1861 to 1896, martyr and national hero of the Philippines, completed his ophthalmological training under Professor Louis de Wecker in Paris. Number 3. Rizal as musician. In a letter dated November 27, 1878, he told Enrique Let that he learned the solfeggio, the piano, and voice sculpture in 1 month and a half. It is said that he even composed some songs, particular Alinmang Lahi and a sad danza, La Defortacion. Jose Rizal is known for his excellence in fields such as science, medicine, literature, and art, among others. However, Rizal had no natural aptitude for music, and this he admitted. He studied music only because many of his schoolmates at Ateneo were taking music lesson. He told Enrique Let that he learned the solfeggio, piano, and voice sculpture in 1 month and a half. He is also known a flutist. Some of his compositions are Alinmang Lahi, Any Race, a patriotic song which asserts that any race aspires for freedom, La Defortacion or Defortation, a sad dance composed in the Pitan during his exile. The lyrics of the song, also penned by Rizal, talk about the quest for freedom from oppression by foreign invaders and the willingness to fight battles to restore freedom for one's countrymen. Rizal was not deemed as an excellent flutist or singer, but he went on with his musical inclination by composing his own songs. Most of the songs were his poems that were set to music. His popular novels Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo also contain several passages and references concerning music. In historic Heidelberg, Rizal reluctantly left Guy Fawkes on February 1, 1886 for Germany. He visited Strasbourg, capital of Alsace-Lorraine, and other German border towns. On February 3, 1886, he arrived in Heidelberg, a historic city in Germany famous for its old university and romantic surroundings. So, Heidelberg is the city of Romanticism. Towards the end of the 17th century, during the War of the Palatinate Succession, the city and the castle were destroyed by the French. The city retained its medieval ground plan but was rebuilt in the Baroque style. In February of 1886, the 25-year-old Jose Rizal arrived Heidelberg, Germany, from Paris. With the goal of furthering his study on ophthalmology, he attended lectures by Dr. Otto Becker and Professor Wilhelm Kuhey at the Alt University, and he trained in an eye clinic under Dr. Otto Becker. To the flower of Heidelberg. In the spring of 1886, Rizal was fascinated by the blooming flowers along the cool banks of the Neckar River. Among them was his favorite flower, the light blue forget-me-not. Rizal used the flowers of Heidelberg as his symbol of his love for his motherland. The beauty of the flower is comparable to the way he looks at our country, that anyone who will see the flower may get in touch with Rizal's concern for his motherland. Among them was his favorite flower, the light blue forget-me-not. The beautiful spring flowers reminded him of his home in Calamba. In his mood of homesickness, he wrote on April 22, 1886, a fine poem, A Las Flores of Heidelberg to the Flowers of Heidelberg by Jose Rizal. Famous poet, all poetry, the pilgrim nurses for his native sod, thinking of her constant vernal dime, that in his country in full sunlit places on the basis of the Neckar, or in a forest nook, he pressed the flexible petals that he took that dwell within the sacred fraternal home. With Pastor Almer at Wilhelmsfeld. Rizal spent a 3-month summer vacation at Wilhelmsfeld. He stayed at the vicarage of a kind Protestant pastor, Dr. Karl Almer. He ended his journey on June 25, 1886. He returned to Heidelberg, carrying with him beautiful memories of the Almer friendship and hospitality. Almer shared his knowledge and insights on Rizal's stay in Heidelberg, Germany. He passionately spoke of how Rizal was welcome in the house of German pastor Karl Almer, who was the speaker's grandfather. He expounded on Rizal's efforts to finalize the Noli Me Tangere. During that time, Dr. Fritz Hack Almer. Dr. Almer is the great-grandson of Pastor Karl Almer, who hosted Rizal for the 3 months in Wilhelmsfeld in 1886. The memories of that stay, as well as Rizal's correspondence and memorabilia, here since become part of the Almer family legacy through 3 generations. First letter to Blumentritt. July 31, 1886, Rizal wrote his first letter in German to Professor Ferdinand Blumentritt. In his letter, Rizal said, I have heard that you are studying our languages and that you had already published some book about it. Rizal's friendship with Blumentritt began in July 13, 1886, when Rizal wrote his very first letter to Blumentritt and sent the letter a Tagalog arithmetic book. Blumentritt had great interest in the Philippines and studied the Filipino language. Scholars are attributed to Blumentritt his title of being the chief expert of the Tagalog language. Rizal and Blumentritt were good friends and addressed each other as my brother or main brother. Fifth Centenary of Heidelberg University. Rizal was fortunate to be sojourning in Heidelberg when the famous University of Heidelberg held its 5th centenary celebration on August 6, 1886. Rizal arrived in Leipzig. He attended some lectures at the University of Leipzig on history and psychology. He friended Professor Friedrich Ratzel, a famous historian, and Dr. Hans Mayer, German anthropologist. Rizal found out that the cost of living in Leipzig was the cheaper in Europe, so he stayed for 2 months and a half. On October 29, he went to Dresden, where he met Dr. Adolf B. Mayer, the director of the Anthropological and Ethnological Museum. In Leipzig and Dresden, August 9, 1886, Rizal left the city. He boarded a train and arrived in Leipzig on August 14, 1886. He befriended to Professor Friedrich Ratzel, a famous German historian, and Dr. Hans Meyer, German anthropologist. On October 29, he went Dresden, where he met Dr. Adolf B. Meyer, the director of the Anthropological and Ethnological Museum. Part of his activities in this city was attendance at the lectures given by German professors in history and psychology. He came to know Professor Ratzel, a famous German historian, and Dr. Hans Meyer, German anthropologist. He translated Schiller's William Tell into Tagalog. He worked as a proofreader in a publishing company to augment his allowance. Rizal welcomed in Berlin scientific circle. In Berlin, he met for the first time Dr. Fyodor Hagor. Dr. Hagor introduced Rizal to Dr. Rudolf Virchow, famous German anthropologist, and the latter's son, Dr. Hans Virchow, professor of descriptive anatomy. Rizal became a member of the Anthropological Society, the Ethnological Society, and Geographical Society of Berlin upon recommendation of Dr. Hagor. His membership in the scientific societies proved that his scientific knowledge was recognized by Europe's scientists. He was the first Asian to be accorded such honors. Rizal was enchanted by Berlin because of its scientific atmosphere and the absence of race prejudice. He met personally Dr. Theodor Hagor, who invited him to attend the monthly luncheon of the member of the Geographic Society. In one of the luncheons, he came to know the famous Virchow, president of the Anthropological Society of Berlin. Some scientists Rizal met are Dr. Fyodor Hagor, German scientist, traveler, and author of Travels in the Philippines; Dr. Rudolf Virchow, famous German anthropologist; Dr. Wilhelm Jost, German hagiographer; Dr. Karl Ernst Schwiger, famous German ophthalmologist. Rizal's life in Berlin. Rizal lived in Berlin for almost 6 months, November 1, 1886 to May 11, 1887. They were months of intense study, of rich experiences, and fungal ways of idealistic dreams and actual encounters with people of diverse cultures. Rizal lived in Berlin for 5 reasons: to gain further knowledge of ophthalmology, to further his studies of science and languages, to observe the economic and political condition of the German nation, to associate with famous German scientists and nation, to associate with famous German scientists and scholars, to publish his novel, No Limit Hangere. Rizal worked as an assistant in the clinic of Dr. Schweger, and at night, he attended lectures in the University to Berlin. He also took private lessons in French under Madame Lucy Cordol. Rizal on German woman. One of his important letters written while he was in Germany was that addressed to his sister, Trinidad. Rizal expressed his high regard and admiration for German womanhood. Rizal sent a letter to his sister Trinidad dated on March 11, 1886. Rizal said that German woman is serious, diligent, educated, and friendly. Some of the German custom Rizal admire: one Yuletide season, people would select a fine tree form from the bushes and adorn it with lanterns, paper, lights, dolls, candies, fruits, and etc. Self-introduction to strangers in a social gathering. German custom. Aside from German woman, Rizal admired the German customs, which he observed well. It must be noted that he was a keen observer of the customs of the people in all the countries he visited. He spent his leisure moment touring the countrysides around Berlin, observing keenly the customs, dresses, homes, and occupation of the peasants. He also enjoyed promenading along Unter den Seiden, the most popular boulevard of Berlin, sipping beer in the city's inns and talking with the friendly Berliners. The winter of 1886 in Berlin was his darkest winter. He lived in poverty because no money arrived from Calamba, and he was flat broke. He could not pay his landlord, and he had shrimp eating only one meal a day. The diamond ring which his sister Saturning gave him was in pawn shop. He could not pay his landlord. He had to shrimp eating only one meal a day, and that daily meal consisted of bread and water or some cheap vegetable soup. His clothes were old and threadbare. He washed them himself because he could not afford to pay the laundry. His health broke down due to lack proper nourishment. This is one of the most memorable days in the life of Rizal. That's all. Once again, good morning, everyone.